Hi, my name is Adriel William, and today's video is for international dentists and students who are applying to dental schools in the United States. And today I'm going to be talking about supplementary questions, supplementary applications that are asked by the dental schools. So there are portals like CAAPID, which gathers all your information regarding your personal statement, your academic background, your work background, letter of recommendations, and everything. But when you go on to apply to specific schools, most schools have their own questions that they ask you. For example, Boston University, BU, Colorado, UCSF, UCLA, each one of them have their own questions which they ask you. And I'm going to try to share some of the points that helped me in the past when I was applying and which has helped the candidates I've assisted in the past 1 year. One of the things that you need to keep in mind, why are the schools asking you for more information? Why are they asking you for more questions? Because they already gathered a lot of standardized information regarding you through the CAAPID application, right? You gave your personal statement, your demographic, everything. But why are they asking these specific questions again? And why are those questions different from each school? So, one of the things that you should think is that each school's admission committee or program director or faculty or the dean have some specific things that they are looking in their candidates. That's why they are asking you some specific questions. For example, UCSF asks you about how many partial dentures have you done, how many pros cases have you done, how many restorative cases have you done, and they ask you about detail of these cases. So when you're looking at it, you imagine that this school or the faculty or the admission committee is focusing on clinical aspect that you have done in your past academic background or clinical work. In the same manner, when you go to other schools, for example, Boston University, it specifically asks you how are you a good fit for the Boston University's Goldman Dental School. So in the same manner, when you look at Colorado's application, they have some specific questions that they are asking. UCLA, for example, asks you about your code of conduct. What do you think? Professionalism, honesty, and work ethics, and these kind of questions. So, whenever you're reading an application, remember these are some of the things that the school are highly focused on. They have your resume, they have your SOP, they have the rest of all the information, standardized information, but they want you to tell something more about yourself. The second point I'm going to tell you is that the supplemental answers should be a continuation of your personal statement and your application. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that, for example, in my personal statement, I wrote, I love to do research. My resume shows that I've done a lot of research, and research is one of the core focus in my life. But when it comes to my supplemental answers, I start to say that I want to do community work. Now, this doesn't seem coherent. So, what you want to do is have a coherent theme. Your narrative should be common. So, what you're saying in your resume, what you're saying in your personal statement, in your LORs, and in your supplemental answers should be coherent and should go in one flow. So, you want to keep your story standardized. You want to keep your story coherent, I would say, or in a manner that makes sense. You don't want to go zigzag that in one place you're saying I want to do a postgrad in prosto, and in another thing you're saying I want to do community work, and in the third thing you're saying that you've been a research focused person. And if you want to say all of this, make sure you connect all of these aspects into one alignment. Then it makes sense. So that was the second thing that you want to make sure that it is a continuation of that application. So deal it in the same way as you're dealing with the CAAPID application. One of the most important thing I'm going to tell you, and this is not just regarding supplemental questions, this is not just regarding your CAAPID, it's regarding everything you do in United States. Every form that I filled in for my master's admission, my immigration, everything, my visa papers, everything. make sure you read the questions thoroughly. I've known a lot of people who actually made blunders or mistake by not doing their signatures right, by not ticking the right boxes. So whenever you're filling in form, regardless of what country you are in right now, you want to make sure that you read your questions thoroughly. And even if you have to do a couple of times, do it in a conscientious way that you don't skip or miss anything. That is very, very important. Third thing that you want to do is that this is one of the things that was taught to me by a endodontic resident, Dr.Mitsy Novak. I did a interview with her. I'm going to share the link in the description. You can watch that interview that I did. But when I was applying to schools, she told me one thing: be very brief. Brevity is the key. So what does that mean? For example, if you can fill in your application about your weakness, about your strength, about your program, anything like that in few lines, in like 5 lines or 6 lines, do not try to drag it to fill 5,000 words. Just because they gave you a limit of 5,000 words doesn't mean you have to fill all of the 5,000 words. If you can explain your answer, explain your story in an articulated manner within 200 words, then you don't have to go towards 5,000 and just put in fillers and drag your story. Because just imagine, from a reader's point of view or the admission committee point of view, if you're reading 500-600 applications and somebody wrote whole big essays and keep repeating the same thing that that person mentioned in the resume, in the SOP, in the CAAPID application, and now also in the supplementary questions. That seems very bizarre, I would say, or mundane or boring. So I would suggest that keep your answers brief. One of the most important thing about professional writing is you want to be straightforward, brief, and very clear. This is very important. And you can learn more about this in the interview that I'm sharing in the description. One other point that I would suggest that you want to look into is that make sure, and I know this is trivial and everybody knows about this, but I still want to focus on this, that make sure that your punctuation, your grammar, and your English should be the best you can do. If you take some help from a friend, family, anywhere, do that, professional help, but make sure you don't make grammatic mistakes. Try to keep them to the minimum. And one other thing you want to do is make sure that your level of communication or the language that is being used in the personal statement should be coherent with the one being used in the supplemental answers, because you don't want to have a discrepancy, a difference in writing, which seems like somebody else wrote the personal statement and somebody totally different wrote down the supplementary answers. Other, it will just seem there's something going wrong and it just raises a red flag. So I would suggest you want to keep it coherent. Again, make sure it's a continuation. So do not have large discrepancy between your writing. One other important thing that has been happening since the past year is a lot of schools, even CAAPID, they ask you about anything, that any hardship, any difficulties, any changes that came into your life due to COVID. And I know everybody's been affected. Everyone who's living right now pretty much has been affected by COVID in one way or another. It could be financial, emotional, you lost some family member, you couldn't travel, stuff like that. One of the things I would suggest you is, if you have something that you want to share, it could be personal, it could be academic, it could be professional. You should share it, but keep it brief. One thing you want to make sure, if you're saying the same thing with the rest of the 800 candidates are also saying, oh, that during COVID I lost my job. Yeah, a lot of people did. But you want to tell your story in a very brief and distinct manner. You don't want to copy paste the same thing that the rest of the folks are also saying. If that's the case, I would rather avoid saying it, because it implies to everybody, right? Then what's the use of saying the same thing over and over again and acting as a victim? So one of the things you want to do, if you're talking about that incident, keep it brief, keep it straightforward. And beside this, I would suggest that try to be honest in your supplemental answers. I know some schools ask you about your personal traits. They are not directly asking about how many cases have you done. They might be asking about your strengths, your weakness, something from your personal life. You want to have something of a story, a small brief story which really describes your strength, which really describes your weakness, and you want to try your best that it suits your story. It should seem as honest as possible. You don't want to say something that doesn't flow in with your personal statement. And that's something which take time, but you need to sit down and think. And if you need professional help, you need help from family and friends, you should take it. Always have a second or a third person read it. It's very important, because even when I am writing or doing something, I feel I did the best job, but when somebody else read it, it might not make sense. So it's very important. Beside this, if you need more help and assistance, you can reach out to me. Hopefully, in December, I'm going to have a December break. Winter break is coming in. So my plan is to do a small workshop with candidates who are applying through CAAPID regarding their personal statement, regarding filling their CAAPID application, LORs, and hopefully I will be able to work more and help out more candidates during this break. But meanwhile, do keep me in your uh, well wishes, and hopefully I will see you in a more meaningful video. Kindly do subscribe to the channel, and your feedback is highly appreciated. Like the video, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.